Jesse, you're just teeing this whole thing up for me. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do it.
So fill in the blank. It's blank that Vyper defensive end Jordan Batello says he's dropped close to 20 pounds and is weighing between 250 and 255 right now.
It's finally something positive when it comes to Jordan Botelho. And I saw him in his interview today, and I never knew he sounded like that. First of all, he's got like a very kind of like deep, um, just I don't know. It's not he's not what I thought he was gonna sound like. First of all, but he definitely looks
Deep,
trimmed up,
deep
and he's
yet soft spoken. Is that kind
yeah,
of
he's like kind of like deep, but like very not a lot of the like deep answers, just kind of quick, short
Mhm.
answers. But no, in all honesty, I've said it before. Jordan Botelho is one of the bigger question marks to me at the defensive end, or sorry, at the Vyper position. So seeing something kind of positive come out of his offseason training was, something that made me feel a little bit better. He talked about how he was down in Florida, immediately after I think spring camp. He went straight down to Florida and continued to work out, continued to get in shape, lost some of that weight. And, to me, I like a Vyper that's going to be quick. I don't want, a more heavy set kind of slow footed Vyper. And so if Batello can get in, better shape and that allows him to be quicker, come off the ball faster, but not lose any of his strength when he's, battling some of these big tackles, especially against, Texas A&M, then I'm all for it. But at the end of the day, we'll see. I know Bobakar has been continuing to, shine in fall camp. They said he was even better than what he was in spring camp. So, if I'm Jordan Botelho, I'm feeling the pressure. And I think that's something that's good for Jordan Botelho because he needs to be pushed in some regards.
Yeah, and I mean he continues to run with the number ones, and I'm trying to remember, about what Boubacar Traore weighed, and I'm trying to look it up here right now. He's a little bit lighter than that because like someone was at, yeah, he's 240, so he's even smaller, and like Mr. 2.0 is asking, do we want him that small? I mean, Isaiah Foskey is only about 10 pounds more.
Oh, look at the Bosa brothers in the NFL.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's much more about the just what you were saying, the explosiveness and the quickness getting off the line. So,
I mean, it's the
you know,
first move. Can you beat the tackle in your first move? And so Jordan Botelho is not going to win, going full on strength, bull against these tackles. He's got to be able
he's
to
got to be a speed rusher.
he's
Yeah.
got to be a speed rusher. He's got to develop moves and use his quickness and his, his agility to his advantage. So I think if you're getting under like the 240 range, kind of more like your linebacker type weight, I think then that's something to be concerned about. But as long as he's staying between 250 and 260, I think there's nothing to worry about. He really needs to use his speed to his advantage, and that's how he's going to be effective as a pass rusher.
I think so as well. And when he was asked kind of what's different and kind of what's changed for him coming into this year, the first thing he mentioned was the weight and just talking about the explosive training and stuff like that and kind of tweaked his diet a little bit. He said I didn't even realize it, but apparently they opened up like a Korean barbecue place here in town that he was frequenting quite a bit. He said he had to lay off the Korean barbecue. And that's what helped him drop drop that weight. So, I mean, ultimately, he's still got to go out and prove it. We've got to see him actually do it on the field. And again, the unfortunate thing is, as we evaluate, like even going back to the offensive line talk, as we try to evaluate whether this is a good move, bad move, indifferent, whatever it happens to be, like we don't have enough information to go on right now because we're not seeing these guys go live 1v1. The only hint of that we got to see was on day one last week, and they weren't in pads. So it's always going to look a lot different, when they're not in pads, when you don't get to see them live. So it's a good start for Jordan Botelho. And again, like not only does he have to come off the edge and explode, but because he's the Vyper, he does have to cover space as well. When you're
Yeah,
talking
he's going
about
to be
pass
better in
defense and stuff
coverage.
like that, yes, you expect him to be better in coverage. So
Well,
I think it's
the
going to
the
be
way that
good.
you're going to be able to mix and match him in pressures, is he going to be rushing? Is he going to be, dropping out and a linebacker now comes, to bring the rush, or maybe you bring a cornerback blitz. and the defensive end drops into the flat. You know what I mean? There's just, or sorry, the Vyper by definition in Notre Dame's defense. But it's, I wouldn't say that I like Jordan Botelho was by no means like fat, but like, he had some of that pudginess and you could see it on his face. And now he just looks very chiseled. He looks like a guy who, dropped the unnecessary weight. He's going to be quick, but he's still going to maintain his physicality at the same time.
Yeah. So where did it go? Someone was asking what he weighed last year. Sloppy Joe was asking what he weighed last year. He was listed at like 265, which again is like Foskey type weight. He's a little bit smaller than Foskey. He said he was closer to 270 last year. So, again, he's lost in the 15 to 20 pound range is what he's saying. And like you said, I mean, like he's always looked like a pretty good physical specimen. Now it's just a matter of putting it all together and actually going out there and showing you can do it on Saturday. So again, good start. Prove it now is what he's got to do. So Notre Dame running backs coach Deland McCullough says freshman linebacker Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa is one of the toughest Irish defenders for his running backs to block on blitzes. Here's what McCullough said about KVA this week.
Came we had two guys blocking. We spent out both of them, in the back being one of them. Like, I just watched the tape. I said, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" Man? I said, "We had a guy there, and a back came up. Jeremiah came. He spent off both of them. Like, how's that happen?" So again, man, that's a credit to him. Man, he's a good player. Yeah. But he makes us better because, man, we got to make sure all our details are on point when we go against him.
All right, so there's Deland McCullough talking about KVA. What's that mean to you, Jess?
Yeah, I'm glad you saved this question for me because one of my least favorite periods during individual drill was working on pass rushing. It sounds fun, but it's really challenging at the end of the day, and it's just one-on-one. You and the running backs, they're trying to block you. Linebackers are bringing pressures. You're working on your rip moves, spin moves, whatever you want to do to get to the quarterback. Me personally, I wasn't blessed with as much agility and the side to side and the spin moves and that sort of stuff. And so when you hear KVA is doing this and as a true freshman, to me it's like nothing but excitement. Like this is what you want out of a linebacker, a guy who can create pressures. And to me it just shows overall athleticism, a guy that has ton of agility, ton of speed, ton of athleticism. I mean, if he's beating your running backs consistently, putting spin moves on them, like, again, that just shows to me his overall athleticism and his speed. So it's something to be really excited about. And it's just, I can't see how they're going to keep him off the field this season. He's going to have, so many different roles, whether that's special teams, getting in certain packages as a linebacker, whatever it might be. I just think there's so much talent and athleticism that we continue to hear about, and he continues to put, display in practice, that it's just, there's no way he's not going to be on the field this season.
No, he is. He might not be a 3-down linebacker, but at the very least, he's going to be a 3rd down kind of guy who's going to come on the field and get after the quarterback because, like that one day in practice, we did see some of that where he came on the field. The first thing he did was get after the quarterback. He and Jaden Osbury both, getting out there and coming on the blitz. So, Drake Bowen, still a place for Drake Bowen being the guy, but I think that you are going to have a hard time keeping Kyngstonn Viliamu-Asa off the field at the very least because he's going to come in these different packages, whether it's nickel, whatever it happens to be. He can be a package guy and carve a big role in the defense. And just like you said, he'll play in a lot of special teams as well. I mean, if you have a guy with this kind of skill set, you use it. You play to those strengths.
I know this is going to maybe scare a lot of people away, but you have to realize this guy did get drafted. I think he is, he reminds me of Maris Leofau, but I think he's going to be even better, even quicker, even, even better in the run fits, coverage, all around. I mean, he's going to be an inside linebacker that is playing like a Maris Leofau, who is more, outside, kind of on the edge and that sort of stuff. So to have that versatility and athleticism out of your middle linebacker, who is also, he's got to be strong and big enough to stuff the run, but still has the ability to, do all the other stuff in coverage, bringing pressure. Like that's a huge, huge bonus. It's kind of having, to me, it's like having JD Bertrand and Maris Leofau in the same body is the best comparison I can give.
Ooh, okay.
Kind of combining the best of both. You know
Kind
what
of
I
like
mean?
that. Best of both worlds. Yeah.
That's how
like
I
that.
kind of see him right now.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take that. Mitchell's asking recruiting questions. We don't do recruiting questions. That's not us. You can ask Brian, recruiting type stuff, and we've got a new recruiting guy as well, Nick. But I can't tell you what's going to happen on the recruiting trail, unfortunately. Sly Fox asking about Brennan Vernon, and we had some cuts. Was it yesterday? We were doing the Al Golden stuff? No. Yeah, we played a little bit of Al Golden stuff.
I know you get it confused because when's the last time Vince did two shows in a row?
Seriously, right? Like, check the calendar. It's been a while. Al Golden was asked, I guess it was Friday is when he was asked about it, and then we played it yesterday. He was asked about who has stepped up after Gabriel Rubio's injury, and he brought up guys like Donovan Heinisch. He brought up Jason Onye. He brought up Armel Mukum, who are all guys.
The young guy, not Cade.
Cole Mullins was the next guy.
Mullins,
another freshman
Cole Mullins. That's the name I was looking for.
He brought up Cole Mullins as well. He did not voluntarily bring up Brennan Vernon. He was asked about Brennan Vernon, and essentially the response that you got is still working on it. Still developing, still coming together. So it's that's essentially the extent of it. I wouldn't call that intel one way or the other, but as for right now, Brennan Vernon is a guy who is still working to get himself kind of into that mix. So that's where that is. So we got to talk to Howard Cross today, Notre Dame nose guard, and he mentioned consistency of play when we talked to him today. And so I asked him about the importance of consistency, like how important consistency is to him. And it was very interesting. Here's what he had to say. Strap in.
It's extremely important. Like, why would you have a fantastic 3 games and then just have an awful next 2 games? Like, that doesn't do anything. Or if you that's how you get to the number 1, number 2 spot. How you get to the national championship. You do it by being consistent every single time, not just having fantastic. Like, I think there's the season that they won. Coach Saban had like a season where Alabama won, and then they almost lost to, I don't know, some wacky bum team. I don't know. I saw an interview on TikTok or something like that. And again, like every other team, they blew out by like 60, 70, and then this team they blew out by like 7, 8, and like Coach Saban lost his mind. They were already like 8 or 9, 10 games in. They beat every team by like 80 or 90. Like he lost it, and he still to this day, like he's referencing it like all this. It's like 7 or 8 years. He still references that game. And again, like and he's won like, I don't know, 5 or 6 more national championships since then. But he still references that game. Like you need to be consistent all the way through. We can't just and I pray that we get to that point where like we're them. We have to act like it. We can't be complacent. We have to be like, all right, we've gotten to this point because we've done this stuff. Keep doing it. You know what I mean? Not we got to this point. All right, we're good. We got it. Like that's not really how this works.
So a couple of different things. One, Howard Cross was obviously doing his Max Bulla. He was,
man, he is all the hands. He is a nervous hands guy.
Yes, very much. That's what all that thumping was with the, that you heard there. It was Howard Cross talking with his hands. 2, like before that, he had essentially, he was just given, kind of relatively brief answers. And then I asked him a simple question about consistency, and he just went off on the importance of consistency. So, like, what do you think about that, Jess?
I find it to be admirable because he's a veteran at this point, and he has to be a leader for these young defensive linemen, him and Riley Mills. And so, they talked about it or kind of touched on it today. It's not enough anymore just to be, basically be, the studs at the number 1. They need studs at number 2. They need studs at number 3 with how much these defensive linemen are going to rotate in and out. And so how do you do that? You have to be consistent at the 1s, you have to be consistent at the 2s, and you have to be consistent at the 3s. It's not a matter of just the 1s being consistent. Everyone needs to be consistent if you want to be, a solid unit in general. And I think that's what he's, kind of taking leadership, him and Riley Mills amongst the defensive line is, okay, we know we're good and we know that we're going to, we need to consistently play. But that's what you younger players need to get into your head is it's not enough just to have, a wow play and then have two, maybe mediocre to bad plays. Like no one cares about the great play when you're making bad plays after it. Everyone wants you to be consistently good, play in and play out. And so I find it really refreshing to see these guys, older veterans instilling this into their younger defensive linemen because they know that they're only going to be as good as these younger guys are because they're going to need breaks. They're going to be rotating in. We know they're going to play a lot of defensive linemen. And so I think it's very important. And I'm glad that Howard Cross is, leading by example, essentially.
Yeah. And and that's kind of what it's interesting that you went down that path because that was kind of the question before that, like with such an experienced defensive line, like how does that, is the mindset any, like what does that mean, with as much experience as they have? And then, then he kind of touched on consistency a little bit. And then of course he went into that, look, I think the consistency sometimes sounds like just a cliche, trite answer, like coach speak sometimes, or even player speak. But I think that, there's just a ton of importance to it because of all the layers that you just outlined right there and because of what Howard Cross said right there. Andrew, interesting follow-up. He says, the problem with this soundbite is why isn't Freeman reminding them about losing games last year? Cross has to draw inspiration from YouTube clips? ? But the answer to that question, Andrew, is what you're talking about is negative reinforcement. Like, why would you, as a head coach, want to be putting negative thoughts into the player's mind about things that happened last year? You're trying to fill their mind with positive thoughts about the task at hand, win the interval, win the day. Again, it might sound cliche, but that's what it's about. It's about what's in front of you, not something that happened a year ago. If you take care of all these little things in the build up to the big thing, and that is each rep on game day, then all that stuff is going to take care of themselves. You don't want to put in their mind negative things that happened a year ago and, like have that kind of weight looming over them, essentially.
Yeah, I'm to kind of take that, a little bit further. Maybe mindset is different these days, and maybe people will criticize that players are or everyone likes to say softer than what they used to be. But here's to me the kind of biggest point with this: no one wants to be consistently reminded of their failures. Everyone knows what happened. Everyone knows the shortcomings that they had as the individual and how and the shortcomings they had as a team in those games. And when coaches start kind of preaching like, oh, well, you don't want Louisville to happen again. Well, where do you think your mind naturally leads to? And you start kind of doubting and
Louisville will
yourself.
Happen again. Yeah. Then now you're playing Louisville and all these doubts start creeping in.
And so instead of playing with confidence and playing 100 miles per hour, now you're playing with doubt. And we all know when you're playing with doubt, you're not moving as fast and playing at your full potential like you could be. So that's kind of where I would go with that one.
Again, Andrew, he wasn't talking about Saban necessarily using, because he said, Andrew's saying he's talking about how he was inspired by Saban focusing on a poor showing. It's like, it was the example that he was using about the importance of consistency. So like, he might've been motivated by somebody else, but again, it's like, that was Alabama's, not even loss. It was just like, that was Alabama's, step back. They're not blowing people out by enough. It's not necessarily like he's being motivated by, and maybe Howard Cross is being motivated by those things. I'm sure he's motivated by a lot of things because, as veteran as he is. So, but I agree. I think the important thing is for them just to focus on this year and not get caught up, thinking about negative thoughts from last year and that kind of thing. So here's a little from defensive coordinator Al Golden, who was asked about comments from Arizona State grad transfer Jordan Clark about how many of his current defensive teammates just love football and if that's something they want to identify, Notre Dame wants to identify when they are looking at transfer portal players?
Yeah, if football's social for you, like this is not the place. Like if you want to be great, if you want to be really coached in the fundamentals of the game, the ball disruption, how to defend a screen, how to tackle, different techniques in the run game. If you want to be challenged with that all day, how to play situational football. If you want to be challenged that with every day until every one of those tools becomes your own, this is the place to come. And that's the truth. Like if you just want to roll the ball out and just play the same coverage, every play, like this is not it. So this is an NFL system that we execute and that we are given to the guys. They're empowered to take it over and execute at a high level. And to do that, you need to recruit the type of young man that you're talking about. And we couldn't be happier than we are with those guys that have come in the transfer portal.
So I don't know about you, Jess, but when I heard Al Golden say, if football is social for you, this is not the place. This is not a social gathering. What did you think?
I thought that was a little dramatic. I know that there are instances where what he's saying is true, but most college football players love football. I think what he was trying to get at is there are guys who love football, and then there's guys who love football. They're looking for guys who want to absorb as much information as possible, as quickly as possible, and then come to you and say, Coach, we can do more because I understand what's going on, essentially, right? Like, Coach, I understand this coverage. I understand this. Now, what wrinkles can we play off of this? What stuff can we do to kind of play tricks on the offense? So, I think that's ultimately is what he's getting at, is guys who are, basically students of the game as well, because you can just show up, go through motions, and that sort of stuff. But the students of the games, they're studying film, they're studying other tendencies that they see, maybe of not even Notre Dame related. Maybe they're watching football in general and they say, hey, Coach, I think we could try this, or hey, Coach, I think, this might work in this situation. I think that's the sort of player that they're looking for, is someone who is just going to immerse themselves in as much football as they can and absorb as much football as they can, because that allows the more things to kind of unlock in the Notre Dame defense. Like he was saying, if you just want to play basic coverage, or if you want to, certain techniques or certain skills that you want to gain along the way, well, okay, yeah, you can only do those things if you have a basic, understanding the basics. And then we start moving on to more of those, I guess, harder scheme type things.
Yeah. And, I realize it was Al Golden and we're talking about defense, but my mind also went to a guy like when you started talking about that, like guys who love the game, students of the game, and dig deep. That's the kind of guy that Charles Jagasaw was. Like when we got to talk to him in the spring, he talked about he was sitting in the airport after the Sun Bowl waiting, and he had his iPad out or his computer or whatever, and like he's watching game film from the day before, and he's already critiquing himself from the day before, and he does that after practice all the time. Like he is in there trying to get better every day. And you hope that even though a guy like him is gone for the season with as much youth as in that room, like you hope that there are other guys who can kind of carry that mantle. And there are other guys like a guy like Charles Jagasaw could still be an example for some of these young guys, to kind of like, if you want to get on the field, this is the path. This is what you have to do.
This is the guy you should be hanging out with. This is the guy that you should be picking the brain of. Like, hey, like this guy was going to be a starter as what, like basically a true freshman. Like he's obviously doing things right. And so at some point you kind of have to drop that, envy and jealousy and say, okay, well, you have what I want and I'm willing to work hard to get it. What can you do? What can I pick up from you? What tools can I add to the toolbox? And that's what Notre Dame players need to be. And I think that's the type of player Al Golden is looking for, is, again, people who are just constantly want to learn and get better at their craft.
I concur. So Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bevacqua recently told The Athletic that despite these protestations that we heard from USC head coach Lincoln Riley and his doubt about the continuance of the Notre Dame Southern Cal series going forward, the USC administration is, quote, gung-ho about keeping the series alive in the future. Scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that the series is going to continue?
I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 just because I feel like it. I don't want to give it a 10 out of 10 and be overconfident. I'm one of the people who feel like 10 out of 10 is it's kind of like 105%. It's not really possible. But I just it's a long-standing rivalry. It's a rivalry that benefits both sides. USC really can't. One of their biggest complaints was having to travel to South Bend during certain times of the year. Like, if anything, that's gone out the window because now they're part of the Big Ten. They're going to have to be traveling whenever and wherever. It doesn't really matter anymore. So it's just, I think it's always going to be a quality opponent for both teams. It's already a long-standing rival. And again, it allows, Notre Dame to get out to California, recruit a certain area that they want. And I'm sure it allows USC to do, some of the recruiting that they want throughout the Midwest. So I just don't, there's no real glaring reason why it should end. And so that's kind of my reason why, it should ultimately it's ultimately going to continue. Like, USC is going to be playing actually more games in this region. So to me, it's like less of a problem than what it used to be.
I think that for now, mine is 9 out of 10. And I think that it is important to remember, look, why did Lincoln Riley leave Oklahoma? Because he didn't want to go to the SEC. And when they make these kind of moves, and of course he's at USC for less than a year. And the next thing you know, USC is going to the Big Ten. They don't ask for coaches' inputs when they're making these macro decisions like this, going to a new conference. When these schools shift, it is about what? It is about the money. And at the end of the day, while USC being in the Big Ten is about money, you still have an athletic department now that's all these other sports that have to do a lot more traveling. And the bottom line is the bottom line. Notre Dame USC is a huge moneymaker for Southern Cal. When the Fighting Irish go to the LA Coliseum
Very true.
every other year. And so while it might not be a priority for Lincoln Riley, it is
for the athletic
priority
department.
for the administration, for the people who sign the checks and are watching out for the bottom line. It's a priority for them. So that's why
Lincoln Riley should care because that's probably a part of his paycheck in some regards.
Yeah. And again, like this came up with the whole talk about LSU and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and predict what Southern Cal's record is going to be. And we'll kind of have a snapshot of what their schedule looks like. So like, I'll just kind of hit the high notes here, like take LSU out because obviously that's a non-conference game. Notre Dame is a non-conference game as well. But, they're playing Utah State this season as their other non-conference game. They're going to Michigan. They have Wisconsin. They have Penn State. They also go to Washington. I think it's going to be a Washington team that's down. And, of course, they have Nebraska, UCLA. So, I mean, it's not like they've got the toughest of schedules. It's going to be harder than a Pac-12 schedule. I'll say that, but I just
more physical.
I don't think that keeping Notre Dame on the schedule is, it's going to be a tougher game, but I don't think it makes or breaks your schedule. The bottom line is you're in a conference and you still have a chance to win that conference and get into the college football playoff just by virtue of doing that. So I can't see why that would be a deal breaker for the USC Notre Dame series. That said, as we know, a lot of rivalries have gone by the wayside. But let's predict Southern Cal's record. They've got an over-under win total of 7.5. So let's predict their record for Lincoln Riley's third season. They start off by playing LSU in Vegas. I've got LSU winning that game. I was going to say, both teams are going to have rookie quarterbacks, talented rookie quarterbacks out there.
I'm going to have to lean towards LSU. I think it's going to be close, but I think just overall kind of size and physicality is going to, win that game for LSU.
I agree. So I think that USC will lose. So they start off the season 0-1, and then they've got Utah State. No reason they should lose to Utah State. Then an interesting very first Big Ten game, they go to Michigan.
I think they're going to actually have more talent than Michigan. And I don't know. A lot of things right now, obviously. And you just wonder how much of an impact that's going to have on this season, right? Like, how much are they hearing about it? How much is this distracting more? Is more going to face any sort of, further repercussions? Like, I just think there's a lot swirling around that. And third week of the season, I still think it's going to be going on. And so I think USC is just going to have a bit more talent and find a way to kind of squeeze that game out. So this was hard because I think that they win either one of LSU or Michigan. I don't think that they lose both of them.
Okay.
So if I go LSU in the first one, I naturally have to take USC in this Michigan game.
Okay. I can see that rationale. We did predict Michigan's record earlier. I have Michigan losing at home to Texas, and I have them beating USC. So I'm going to stick with that. I will take, like you said, there are a lot of questions between the fact that you've got a new head coach and all this controversy
new
hanging
quarterback,
new quarterback, the whole thing.
Lost a lot of players to the draft.
USC's got a new quarterback too, but okay. So I've got a win. You've got a loss. So we're already split. So I've got them 2-1. You've got them 2-1. I've got them 1-2.
Yes.
Then they play Wisconsin.
I think they'll win that one. It's just so hard because they're going to play a different brand of football. There's a difference between these Pac-12 offenses and these more, especially like Wisconsin, Nebraska, Penn State type offenses. Like, I don't know. It's going to be a lot of physicality. I think they're going to have more talent offensively. So I'm going to take USC in this one as well.
Yeah, I've got USC beating Wisconsin. So that puts it at, see, now it's confusing because we have different. So I've got them. I've got
2-2.
hold it. You've got them 2-2. I've got them 3-1.
No, you have 2-2. I have 3-1.
Oh, that's right, because you have them winning. See, totally confused. Okay. Then they're at Minnesota. I've got a win here for USC. Could PJ Fleck and company make it interesting? Maybe. I just think that physically, athletically, USC will be too much for Minnesota to keep up with. So I've got them winning.
Same.
All right. So your record is 4-1, right?
Yes.
Mine is 3-2. Okay. Penn State, home game against Penn State.
I have them losing this game.
As do I. I think that you talk about a couple fun matchups. I mean, the fact that they go to Michigan and play Penn State in the same season, like from a TV schedule alone,
it's a pretty tough schedule for them. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie.
It actually is, the more that I sit and look at it. I was just saying, it's not that tough, but it is a fairly tough, especially considering you're bookending the start and the end with LSU and Notre Dame.
Right.
That obviously ups the degree of difficulty alone right there. So we both got them losing to Penn State. So what's your record now?
I am at, I believe, 4-2.
Yeah, you're 4-2.
And you're 3-3.
I'm 3-3. Okay. Then they go to Maryland. Dub for both?
Yes.
What about a ruckus?
That's a win.
I think a dub as well. So now you're at
6-2.
6-2. I'm at 5-3. At Washington.
That's a win. I think Washington has too much to recover from between, what they lost offensively, their head coach. I just think that USC's in a better position, right? We'll be in a better position.
I agree. So you've got them on a 3-game winning streak. And so they are now 6-3 in my ledger, 7-2 on yours. I'm trying to keep track so I don't keep botching it here. Now they host Nebraska. What's Nebraska going to be this season?
Big question mark. But again, it feels like the same Wisconsin, Maryland, maybe Rutgers wins that they'll have. I think this one might get a little bit closer. But I think they're going to ultimately win this one.
I mean, Nebraska is the king of playing and losing close games. It doesn't matter who the head coach is. Like I heard Matt Rule talk about, we lost all these close games last year. Yeah, well, So did the guy before you. Like, unfortunately, that's kind of the way it goes sometimes until you stop doing it. So, but I think that USC will win this. It's in the Coliseum. I'm not convinced that Nebraska is back just yet. I think that they're going to be closer. I think they'll be a little bit better. But I think, again, kind of like I was saying with Minnesota, that ultimately USC is just going to have way more talent and overall speed than what Nebraska is going to have. So now we go to UCLA and then Notre Dame. Do you see USC winning either one of those games at the end of the season?
I think that they will win UCLA and they will lose Notre Dame.
I completely agree with that. So that puts
to kind of put the bow on that, Notre Dame's defense is just it's going to wreak havoc. It was hard for Caleb Williams. It's going to be hard for, forgive me for whoever is going to be the quarterback for USC. And I honestly think Notre Dame is going to be even more explosive on offense this season. So I think USC is going to have a real tough matchup in that one.
So what's interesting here is we've both got them losing to Notre Dame, and you have them at 9-3, and I've got them at 8-4. And so in both cases, they would be over the 7.5 win total.
Yeah. I think the only game, obviously the Michigan game is, could be a deciding one, potentially that would put us both at 8-4. So I guess, what game to you would potentially be that 7-5 game? What's that one outside of, your 4 losses that you think would give them the most difficulty?
They could drop. Well, I've got them.
Like, what's the swing game? What's the swing game that's going to put them over that, 7 or 8 over under?
That's what I'm trying to figure out here right now, because you have
Nebraska?
You have them beating Michigan. I've got Michigan winning. So that would be that to me is the swing game right there, is the Michigan game for me.
Okay.
How about you?
Yeah, I think the combination of the Michigan and Nebraska games are really ultimately, I think, what's going to decide them, being a 9-3 or a 7-5 team. It's a relatively tough schedule. I'm not going to lie. Like you said, ending, book start with LSU and Notre Dame, and having, Penn State and Michigan in the middle there. That's no fun, no matter who you are. And so I think that there's a real good shot that, to me, the Michigan and Nebraska games are ultimately going to be the deciding factor.
We had one more question. I'm going to save it for tomorrow, since you're going to be coming in for rapid fire again tomorrow as well. We're actually going to have a tag team effort again tomorrow. Vince will start. Jesse will close. He'll bring in his heat at the end of the game. Or is it a little bit more, like a little bit more Trevor Hoffman change up, come in, with that big time change?
Yeah, I'm more so dotting the corners.
Okay.
Setting up the off speed. Playing some mind tricks a little bit.
Pinpoint control. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for braving the weather and for working around your lack of electricity. I thought, all things considered, it went pretty well there.
It did. Are we saving the Olympic question for tomorrow?
That's it. We're saving that one for tomorrow. We're going to save that for tomorrow, since you're going to be on for rapid fire again tomorrow. Actually, you'll be on basically the next 2 days for rapid fire. So we will save that one for tomorrow.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, we appreciate you being here. A lot of offensive line talk tonight. We heard from Joe Rudolph earlier in the show. A lot of great comments from him. A lot of great input as well from the live listeners. Appreciate you. By the way, we will have a We In, We Out show on Thursday, and I think we've got a lot of potential We In, We Out type content that you can hit us up with, and I'll be putting that up on the new Champions Lounge tomorrow, so you can submit your questions for Thursday's We In, We Out show. So appreciate you being here. Hit the like button before you leave if you would, and we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.